My message is for men. And my message to men is that you need to be the change that you want to see. You need to think about what your behavior implies, what your behavior approves of, and you need to take a stand. Because the people that are being abused cannot take a stand. If they could, they would. It's up to us to make the change and to be the light. My message is for men. And my message to men is that you need to be the change that you want to see. You need to think about what your behavior implies, what your behavior approves of, and you need to take a stand. Because the people that are being abused cannot take a stand. If they could, they would. It's up to us to make the change and to be the light. My message is for men. And my message to men is that you need to be the change that you want to see. You need to think about what your behavior implies, what your behavior approves of, and you need to take a stand. Because the people that are being abused cannot take a stand. If they could, they would. It's up to us to make the change and to be the light.
A very good morning to you and welcome. We're coming to you live from Voter World. It is my pleasure and my honor to welcome you to this month's Women's Month discussion on surviving violence. My name is Lebo Mashile and I've been entrusted with the wonderful responsibility of being your facilitator this morning. I'd like to welcome everybody who's watching from Facebook, from the Vodacom family. I invite you please to share the link to this conversation on your Facebook page, on your social media feed. Let people know that this is happening because we have an esteemed panel of activists, feminists, change agents. I'm so excited for this morning's conversation. I'll introduce them to you briefly before I give them a chance to share their personal testimonies and work with you, starting with Masingita Masunga, Rosie Mutene, Cheryl Tabane, and we're also joined by Daki Nejitenje from the Vodacom Foundation, our host this afternoon. Daki is the CEO, or the Chief Officer rather, of Vodacom South Africa, and she's also responsible for Vodacom Foundation, who is driving this conversation this morning. A big welcome to you, Daki. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Lebu. CEO is still fine. Can you hear me?
Great, I love it, yes. We can hear you, we can see you, you look great. We appreciate you. Yes, we appreciate you, CEO, yes. Please, can you share with us, Daki, why it's important for Vodacom to drive this agenda of combating gender-based violence and also empowering survivors to be able to speak about our experiences?
Yes, let me just start with the event, why we have the event. This is part of our lunch and learn sessions that we introduced last year as part of our gender-based violence awareness campaign. We had to adjust the sessions to COVID-19. That is why I am not in the office. We decided to have these sessions because our view is that GBV should not only be highlighted during campaign months, which is March, August, November, and December, but because it happens every minute, we need to talk about it as regularly as possible. So in Vodacom, we have a multifaceted approach to gender-based violence. Our focus, in partnership with government and civil society, is on prevention, it is on response, and it is also on victim support. Prevention is key and very close to my heart because it starts with addressing label stereotypes that promote the social construction of gender identity, where gender roles are assigned on the basis of biological sex.
Yes.
We all know, especially as parents, that a boy child is taught from a very young age to be aggressive, to be a fighter, to be a winner, and hypersexual. And the girl child, we know it with ourselves, on the other hand, is socialized to be submissive, to be domesticated, and also to be an object of a man's desire. And we believe in Vodacom that these stereotypes not only perpetuate gender discrimination, but they lead to gender-based violence and the extreme form of misogyny and violence, which is femicide. However, I need to emphasize that we cannot fight this battle alone. We need men because it is not only women and children who are vulnerable to these forms of discrimination, but also the men who do not conform to the societal expectation of how a man should behave. They also get treated very badly in society. So these stereotypes, as you know, are a global phenomenon, but they are much more pronounced and reported in our beautiful country, South Africa. Unfortunately, Lebu and the panelists, although gender-based violence does not know social class and it can happen to anybody, the majority of the victims of gender-based violence are women. As a young woman at university in the late 80s, I hope I am not selling my age here. It was at the height of our student political activism. I learned something very profound, that women suffer from a triple form of oppression. And that is if you are a Black woman.
Yeah.
Black women do not only suffer from gender discrimination, we also have to contend with racial discrimination.
Yes.
And women from the rural areas and underserviced areas also have to deal with social discrimination. These are the women who experience the most barriers to access to communication. So this is just too much for one human being to bear. But these are the burdens that women carry silently in their daily lives. And we know the hashtag Lives Matter and hashtag MeToo movements, they were born out of the suffering of those that are vulnerable to racial, gender, and class discrimination, and those that are saying enough is enough. And at least today, in this panel, the world is saying enough is enough. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Ki. And thank you for insisting that Vodacom Foundation creates this platform for this dialogue. I love the way you framed these issues because we have many people who are watching today, many different kinds of bodies who are watching today. We have queer people who are watching today. We know that people in same-sex relationships also experience gender-based violence. We have women with disabilities who are watching today, who we know are vulnerable also to different kinds of violence, including gender-based violence. So the scope for who can be on the receiving end of this kind of ill treatment is actually very wide. If you're watching, no matter what body you are in, you have a place in this conversation. Which brings me to our second panelist, Masingita Masunga. Masingita is an entrepreneur. She's a broadcaster. She's a talk show host. She is a pageant founder. From the beginning of her career, you have been centering Black women, women with disabilities, African women. She's an adventurer. Masingita runs. Masingita has driven from Cape to Cairo. Masingita has been up Kilimanjaro. Masingita is loved across the length and the breadth of this country, and she's here to speak specifically about the experiences of gender-based violence that disabled women encounter. And I remember talking to you years ago about the discrimination that disabled women experience, particularly when it comes to sex and relationships.
Yes.
And this is what I'd like to dive into today.
Okay.
We can start there.
Okay.
We can go wherever you want, but I'd like to start there.
Thank you, Lebu, and thank you, Taki, and the team. I'm glad that's where we are going.
Ke tsebile vele.
The thing is, Lebu, Taki alluded to some of the issues. You did allude to that. She spoke about black women having triple form. For some of us, it's double that, if not more.
Yeah.
Because just to say, I deal with racism, I deal with sexism, I deal with ableism,
Yes.
I deal with tribalism, and there's more.
Sure.
If you travel internationally, you deal with xenophobia. So there's more.
Sure.
So that's where I'm coming from. I've never experienced violence in a relationship. Where actually people feel sorry for my partners.
Do they say that?
No, when I'm in a relationship, mostly, look, there's that form of violence where people will look at my partner and think, why feel sorry for me, which is violating my womanhood.
Sure.
And it's like they attack him as if,
Oh, it's a favor.
it's a fever
Sure,
or something.
sure. Wow.
But on the other hand, those who know me, like a friend of mine, I'm saying, I had a fight with, not a physical fight, but couples argue.
Yeah.
And she's like, guess who started? Hang on. Hang on. But here's the thing. Every single day, my humanity is violated. My womanhood is violated. My adulthood is violated. My sexuality is violated. Every single day. You meet women who don't know me. People will call you darling, baby. And these days I'm like, the same way you feel when men call you those names.
Yeah.
It's the same
My
way
side.
I feel. Because you are violating, you are patronizing me.
Sure.
And it's coming sugar-coated with sympathy. That's how I speak. No. That's not how you speak. If we are in the boardroom, why are you calling me darling or my dear? Why? This is the boardroom and I'm a fighter. If it means we fight, let's get on. Let's argue. And sometimes people tiptoe around you. And that's violating my emotional capacity.
Yes.
As if I don't have the emotional or intellectual capacity to handle certain things. And I say to people, don't feel pity for me. Because pity is not a currency. And action is not a compliment.
Yes.
Look at how I'm dressed.
Yay,
When
chest.
I get to the shop, they don't say action and they give me.
25% off.
No. They don't do that. They want their money. They want the same amount of money
Well done.
that you pay. I contribute to the economy like everybody else. But when I'm treated, whether economically, socially, it's like I'm half a person.
And you've been proving people wrong. You've
time.
been working independently. You've been fundraising. You've been up and down the continent, up and down mountains on your own. You get things done.
Let's we talk sexually.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, with the women who've been sterilized without
Their
their
permission,
consent.
yeah.
That has been going on for women with disabilities for years.
Sure.
For years, even in special school. It has been going on because it's like you can't be sexual active. You can't be in a relationship. And people ask all sorts of violating and invading your privacy in the process. Because how different, if I eat the same food, I breathe the same air as you, then why are you asking me all these questions? One of the things that I've appreciated from one of my partners was when we started dating. He said, to me, he said, I need to acclimatize to being with you. And I will always appreciate him for that. Because he was open about it instead of dodging and trying. Sometimes the rejection comes from that because people want to be with you, but they don't know how. But instead of talking about it, I've got the intellectual and emotional capacity of knowing that I have a disability. I've never been in denial about that. It's like when you speak to people and they don't hear you, and pretend like they heard you. For me, it's like you're questioning my intellectual and emotional capacity. I know I've got a speech impediment. You can say to me, what did you say? I'm not going to break down. Come on, it's me. I'm not going to break down and cry. You didn't hear what I said.
Sure.
You repeat it. So those some of the things, but the sexual, that's the worst. That is the worst. And level, it's sad to say it mostly comes from women.
Wow.
That's the sad part of it.
In what way?
In a way that, when you deal with women, it's like at least you're not going to take our men. Yeah.
Wow. So like you're not sexual competition.
No.
Yes.
Wow.
But when they realize that you actually can compete, you become a threat. So it's and for somebody like me, it's a double-edged sword. On the other hand, I don't have an extreme disability to be on this side.
Sure.
On the other hand, I'm too strong to be on the other side. I always say on Mandela Day, at least buy me a pair of shoes because it's a day of doing things for people with disabilities. And people look at me like, how much is it? I'm like, since you're doing things for people, do something that will impact my life. Buy me a pair of shoes. And, but I'm trying to show you that at the same time, when opportunities, and I can't reveal something about it will be revealed later, which makes Vodacom Foundation different.
Yes.
When opportunities are there, you're not good enough for them. But because you're messing it up at the same time, when there are benefits for the vulnerable, for the disability, you are too advanced or you are too economically empowered for that. So it's a double-edged sword.
On that note, I would like to announce what you have just alluded to. So I want to come back to Vodacom South Africa Chief Officer, CEO Daki Nechitenje, to tell us what is this special announcement.
Well, our MD is only going to be starting in September, so let me enjoy the CEO status
Take
until
the
he
shine.
comes.
Take it.
And I
Take
hope
all of
Shamil
it.
is listening. Yes. Ladies, women, serious conversations have started in Vodafone and Vodacom on these forms of discrimination that Masingita is talking about. Because the only way to stamp out racism, gender, and class discrimination, or any form of discrimination for that matter, is to first acknowledge that there is a problem,
It exists.
that these forms of discrimination exist in society in which we operate, and that it will not be tolerated in the workplace. So our global and group CEOs, Nick Reed and Shamil, are already taking the lead. These conversations are good because they force all of us to introspect on the kind of culture that we want to create, not only for ourselves, but for future generations. Through conversations, we are able to address not only the deliberate forms of discrimination in the workplace, educational institutions, and society, but it helps us to also address unconscious bias and underscore unconscious bias. Because sometimes, Lebu, privilege does blind the privileged.
Yes.
Yes.
They portray behaviors or conduct which to them is normal because of socialization, but which behaviors and conduct are actually harmful to others. So the conversations that we are having in Vodacom and what we are having today help us to also tackle toxic masculinity,
Yes.
which is an aggressive culture that is characterized by unhealthy competition and interpersonal relations between co-workers. So when discriminatory and toxic behavior manifests, it must be called out. The perpetrator must know that the behavior or conduct is unacceptable. And as Vodacom, we say we need more partners to highlight and to fight stereotypes. And that is where the announcement comes. I take this opportunity to announce to the world that Vodacom has entered into a partnership with Masingita Masunga.
Yes.
She is now the Vodacom.
Woohoo! Yes. Yes.
Well done.
Yes. Congrats.
Power move.
She is now the Vodacom Foundation ambassador.
Well
Yes.
done.
Yes.
Well done.
Yes. We love to see it.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I think the point
And,
is
and as ambassador, Masingita will champion the values upheld by the Vodacom Foundation. The foundation drives mainly two sustainable development goals, education and gender empowerment. We chose Masingita because of her energy,
Yeah.
because of her
Yes.
passion for life and dedication in addressing societal stereotypes against women, against Black women,
Yeah.
and people with disabilities. And she taught me something. She says, it is not people living with disabilities. She said, I'm not living with disability. I have disability. Masingita is a celebrated South African celebrity. I have seen her shows. I love her confidence. It is infectious. You have just heard and seen for yourself. Masingita, welcome to the Vodacom Foundation.
Oh, wonderful.
It is an
Well done, Sissy.
Yes.
It is an honor for us to be associated with
Exactly.
you.
thank you.
And I am positive that we will walk the societal transformation journey together in harmony. And I wish you all the best with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Lynn.
Well done,
Congratulations.
girl.
Thank you.
We've got lots of questions coming in for you. We'll do a Q&A at
Yeah,
the end
yeah.
once all of our panelists
Yeah.
have presented. But I just want to get, in closing, what are your thoughts on being named an ambassador for Vodacom Foundation?
I think it's a historic move, like,
Yeah.
for me, for a person with a disability to be an ambassador of a big brand,
Huge brand.
a huge brand. I don't think I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but so far I don't think there has been anything like that. I've been in the space for over 22 years.
True
I've
that.
never been a brand ambassador. And
Wow.
yes, and not because, you've just said the things I've done. I've been in the media. Not because, I look good. I'm eloquent.
definitely do.
But
You are
because of
accomplished.
Exactly.
I'm accomplished. I'm not, but because of the stereotype that
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
got a disability, you don't
well
have
done,
the
Vodacom.
image or for this and that. So yeah, this for me is a historic move.
We are
And-
so
done.
happy for
and
you.
one of the great things about it is it also came about the Deputy Minister of Communication saying, you are a person like other people. So we're going to go up. We've got a responsibility also as government to make sure that you get opportunities.
Like
So,
Like
we've-
everyone else.
I must say, and let me say this in closing, please. As a woman to woman, the sexual competition.
Yes.
The reason Dagi chose me, she saw me in an interview wearing a short.
Like you are
Like,
now, with those
and
legs
for me,
and those heels.
That was the intellectual and emotional, capacity of saying, if somebody is this confident, not seeing it as a way of putting a woman down. No, seeing it as power
Yes.
to say, if she's this confident, we need more women who believe in their bodies
Yes.
like this.
Yes.
And that, for me, makes it more powerful.
Well done.
Thank you so much. Well
said.
done.
Wow.
Well
Well
done.
said.
And well done to Vodacom Foundation
Power.
on this historic choice. We've got lots of questions coming in, and I'd like to invite you once again, please share this conversation on your Facebook platforms, on other social media. Please send in your questions on Facebook. We'll have a Q&A once we've heard from all of our speakers, and we definitely want to hear from you. Up next, Rosie Mutene. Pan-African feminist, writer, activist, organizer, actress, producer, agent. Rosie is a powerhouse. And I think the beauty of Rosie's journey is for more than 2 decades, you've taken all of us, the entire country, on your journey of self-discovery, about identity, your evolving politics, your evolving feminism, your evolving activism. You have walked with us as a nation with so much vulnerability and strength and transparency. Rosie wrote and published a beautiful book on her life called Reclaiming the Soil, where she speaks about her experiences growing up basically as like a transracial adoptee, and also detailing your experiences of gender-based violence and how you came to your activism. So we want to hear your perspective. I mean, I'm very interested in what you think about this Women's Month specifically, because there's a change in tone.
Yeah.
We are not talking about, cupcakes and massages, which are great. I'm not here to knock cupcakes and
We
massages.
still want those
right?
vouchers.
Right, we still want vouchers. No, Masakita still wants shoes.
And e-wallets.
E-wallets, 1.5s. We're good with all of that.
Let's balance.
Let's balance. Let's balance.
We need
But
to eat.
something has but something has shifted. There's a ferocity in the voices of women this year.
Yeah.
There's a sustained activist agenda that I see everywhere on
Yeah.
social media, on mainstream media. So I want you to reflect on your story and also on this shift that's happening right now. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Label, because that word shift, I actually used it in a post, I think, 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Because how we've tolerated and how we've accepted and how we've negotiated around gender-based violence is changed.
Yeah.
And there's a direct shift where a lot of us have acknowledged, I mean, we grew up in a patriarchal society. We have ideologies, misogynistic ideologies that have been ingrained from us from an early. So it's a lot of unlearning that we need to do. And we've accepted that and we've made mistakes as activists and feminists. But at the same time is that while we're learning and we put this platform out of this is what is happening. And when you step out of line, you can't go back to those old patriarchal ideologies and think, oh, well, we can do it this way because it's a boys' club, because of male toxicity and all of that, toxic masculinity and so forth. So, I mean, my journey, the first time I suppose I acknowledged abuse was when I was at university, and that was on a physical level. And, you know, you spoke about me, my upbringing, and my foster father always said to me, you know, the minute a man raises his hand to you, you get out of the relationship. And no fault of his and no fault of other parents is that we don't prepare our children on the other levels of abuse. And that's why I said this was the first time I'd acknowledged what abuse was. And so after the incident happened, and why I'm going to mention this is because solidarity and supporting those who speak out is also very important. The night after he had beat me up was a shock. And people need to understand that when abuse happens and you're in a trauma situation, it happens on a physiological and it happens on a neurological level. And your body goes into three different states. Either it's going to be fight, where you need to get out of there, where you're fighting your way out, or it's flight, where you're going to run away, or you freeze. That is when your metabolism slows down, sometimes your heart slows down and you freeze. So
And you blame yourself sometimes because you don't understand why.
Precisely. And that's why a lot of the arguments, and this is where judicial systems need to change, because a lot of the arguments are, well, you didn't scream. How could it have been rape? You know, and so going back to the different levels of when I did my training, because 9 years later afterwards, the bruises had healed. He had sprayed mace in my eye. I had a bruised rib. It was, and you deal with it and you think, okay, I'm fine. And God is amazing because God will put you in situations where it's like, hey, wait a minute, you haven't sorted out this part of your life. And for me, it was giving a talk on gender-based violence, but without a speech, because I'd forgotten my speech on the plane that night. It was in East London. And for the first time, I spoke about it without feeling guilty. And I was like, whoa. I grew up in this privileged home. I had private school education. I had a degree from university, but still I was uneducated. And that's when I did my training. And it was back then when people were like, what are you doing this nonsense for? I mean, I was with Tokozani and Dabo. We were doing it through power. We did counseling and learning about the myths and misconceptions. But more importantly, the other levels of abuse and the other levels of trauma.
What you're saying is powerful because, I mean, like you said right at the beginning, you can be a professional woman, you can be educated, you can be exposed, you can be working, you can have your own money, and you can still be extremely disempowered when it comes to your own understanding of gender-based violence and abuse.
Absolutely. And the thing is, each level is different. And, you know, unfortunately for me, and I was speaking to Masingita earlier on about playing the victim. You know, when life happens, it happens, and you need to deal with it in your own way of how you get out of it. But you always, for me, it's always about rising to the top, and it's always about rising. So like my second climb up Kilimanjaro was I needed to get over the fact that my nose was broken in Botswana, and I did. And through that power, I came back, got my justice. You know, but we all need to go on these different journeys. And so you learn about the different levels of abuse. And one of the things that we need to talk about this platform and why it's so difficult to speak out, but also why it's so important to give the right support to when people do speak out. So fast forward to many, many years later, we're sitting 2012, famous filmmaker, we know the story. I was at a film festival. I get invited as a jury. We all go out as filmmakers. I've had a couple of drinks, and he kept on saying, come watch my Nelson Mandela documentary. And I was like, this guy's really pushing for this. Anyway, I was like, no, I'll come tomorrow. I was feeling a bit tipsy and went home because something inside of me, you know, our instinct, we need to, as women, believe that intuition.
It's powerful.
Next morning I woke up, he calls, you got to come see it. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm feeling okay now, but it was still niggling. Go into the hotel room, I'm sitting down at the desk watching, and then I turn around and he's lying on the bed. And I'm like, although he was still fully clothed, but that feeling that I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I've just clocked you. So for me, I went into that, okay, I'm going to either fight him or I'm going to get the hell out of here. Picked up my bags, got out. And then the next day when I'm thinking, okay, I got out of that situation, then you still doubt yourself. Like, oh, babe, was I overreacting? And then his response, like, oh, you this, and calling me names, and the verbal abuse, and the violence, and the language. But still, because of who he is, and because I was in his world, I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
So a couple of years later, when people said this and what happened, I was like, wait a minute. The mechanisms in which he did were the exact same thing. I even went back before the film festival, where it was mentioning things in LinkedIn. And I was like, there were 3 or 4 other people, the same scenario. Nelson Mandela documentary. This happened. I got out. Yes, I suffered the verbal abuse. I suffered the sexual harassment. But I got out. He didn't touch me. And this is why when we do speak out, and why when I said we need to change our unlearnings from the past, was that, fine, I didn't speak out then. It was wrong of me. But what can I do now?
I mean, you have been an ardent champion of women and survivors, particularly in the entertainment industry. We know that the Me Too movement, which was started by Tara Burke, which wasn't necessarily started in the entertainment industry, was catapulted when women in the entertainment industry put this forward. And we've seen that in the years since Me Too has exploded, we've seen how toxic media, entertainment, and the arts are in particular for women. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen a huge vocal reaction on social media to male predators in the entertainment industry. How do you feel about this? As somebody who's been a champion for such a long time and who took huge bullets, I mean, this has cost you work. This has alienated you. It changed your life, right? How do you feel about this shift that's happening now?
You know, it's ambiguous. So the shift is great that people are understanding we're in a crisis. You know, we had our total shutdown. Our president even said it. Now the hashtag is, you know, GBV, and everyone's like, oh, okay, we got to get onto this, which is great. But understand the implications and the responsibility that is attached to that. So if you're going to be going and you're an organization and you're supposed to be supporting women and doing all of this, make sure you have those mechanisms in place. And understand the severity of that of the abuse. And when and this happened within the industry, where certain ways that certain organizations were operating and desensitizing our pain. I mean, I'll never forget. And I realized it was all part of the strategy, was that his supporters, which going back to what you're saying about women, a lot of them were women. A lot of them he had worked with, so they'd have seen stuff, and there's evidence of that.
He makes money with women.
And that's clever, because remember, they're manipulative perpetrators. So it was all part of his strategy. And so when you're about to break up their status quo, they try and derail you. And that's when I clock them. So when somebody says to me, well, you know, there's somebody else in the industry who's bigger than them, go after him. No, wait a minute, but there's 7 women here who have pain from this person. Let's deal with him first. Me too. I'm one of them. Yes, we'll deal with that one, but let's deal with this one. Or, yes, well, this person's got a history of mental illness, so she's unstable. Because she's unstable doesn't mean that the crime did not happen, and it's a crime. You know, so it's dealing with that. And then you're dealing with, okay, well, we've got this hashtag, let's do this. Cool, great, let's go get our billboards out and we take videos and we get money from this one and we do it. But then what happens after the hashtag? Consequences.
Accountability.
And this happened, and I can say this on a public platform, was that one of our survivors tried to commit suicide. I received the note. So when I called other people, you couldn't provide the support that you were supposed to provide because it wasn't there. And that's okay. But then don't say that you're going to provide and it's not there.
Follow through.
Because then it's that double form of discrimination, the double form of victimization. And what it does to you, Lebo, is that, number one, trauma attacks you in so many ways. Then your PTSD that kicks in and you cannot control it at all.
The guilt,
the everything. Shame. But even on the physiological. For many years, I suffered from fibromyalgia. And only after I came out after this, I realized,
it's your body.
I was dealing with this, and that's when I came out about being my rape, which happened 20 years prior. Your body was saying, "Hey,
Deal with
release,
me.
release,
Release.
go." And so when you're in that space and you want to do good, and especially what's happening, going back to the social media, is that understand the space that you're working in. Many of us have been in the trenches back then and we've done it for absolutely no money. Somebody
Yes,
said to me, you've been working for certain organizations for 17 years. I was never on the payroll. Many of
Yeah.
us have never been on
This
that
is not
payroll.
about money for you.
But now
Yeah.
what the shift is changing is that we will call you out if you are still adapting to patriarchal and misogynistic values. We want you on board, but understand where you're coming from. Understand the script. Understand the pain of what people have gone through before. And it's not just a marketing or publicity gimmick that, okay, we'll hashtag this, and then tomorrow you're going to be, having a nice time with all of these, because the shift is happening and it's not just activists, and it's across the board. I mean, the last couple of weeks, especially the young ones that are coming up, that are actually saying, wait a minute.
They are so vocal, and
Yeah.
they have
And they're
nothing
popping up
to
and like,
lose.
Yeah.
and you think you're having a bad
Unapologetic.
day, and they're like, "Oh, Rosie, we got this." And I'm like, "Yo," and you don't even know the person, but they were like, "Listen, you need to rest today. It's okay,
Yeah.
we got this one."
And
You
they
go to
take
sleep-
over.
You go to sleep, wake up, it's like, what? And it's almost as if you've like fed.
And
what
shows
you've
have
told-
been cancelled. People have been fired.
yeah,
People have
yeah,
done
yeah.
the things. We've got people who are watching from all over the world. I hear that there's questions and comments coming from London. Thank you so much. Please keep them coming. In closing, Rosie, for many people who are watching, and I think just people who are eager to engage with this conversation and these issues, but I mean, as you know, as survivors, as people who are living in a violent society, we are at different levels of understanding and acceptance of our own trauma. Not everyone is ready necessarily to be an activist.
Yeah.
Not everyone is even ready to come out. So we want to encourage everybody. If you are watching, that is an act of resistance. If you believe other women, that is an act of resistance.
Yeah.
We are happy to meet you where you are. There's no formula for how to do this.
Yeah.
But I'd like for you to speak about what are, for women who choose to do so, or survivors who choose to do so, what is the benefit of sharing your story,
Yeah.
of telling your experience?
But before you even do tell your story, is that the importance of getting the right psychosocial support.
Yes.
And I'm going to mention this on a corporate platform, because if you are corporates out there that wanting to put your money where it is, and it's not just a tea party on Women's Day and so
Yeah,
forth,
yeah,
is
thanks.
that our country's in a crisis, and we know that. And although we have, Cheryl's part of an amazing organization. There are many other organizations that provide the support, but it is not enough.
Yes.
Often it's particularly for gender-based violence, is that you're offered maybe 3 to 6 sessions for counseling. Now, depending on the severity of your trauma and how many traumas you've been through, 6 counseling is not even going to touch
No,
sides.
it's not.
So we need to create platforms where adequate psychosocial support is then
Is
put
provided,
there,
yeah.
because we are all suffering. We are all in
The
a
entire
crisis.
country.
We're still
We need
dealing with
counseling.
apartheid.
Very much so.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that in itself is another level of violence, another level of
COVID,
abuse.
you're not
COVID,
self.
we are
It's
now
its
with a
own
double
trauma.
pandemic
Yeah.
with GBV. So
Yeah.
we're all healing. So we need to be gentle with ourselves. But at the same time, is that you can't just have this mass understanding, she was hit, she's fine, send her for counseling, and then she can get back to it. She'll be
Normal,
okay.
yeah.
No, we all deal with it in different ways. But also more importantly, for those that speak out, is that it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
PTSD hits you in all sorts of ways, and when you are triggered, when you're going through trauma, listen to that pain, because that pain is valid. For too long we've been told that we're rocks. Yes, we are strong, but at the same time we're emotional creatures.
Yes. Yes.
Can
Thank you
I
so much.
just add level to what Rose is saying about being strong? One of the things that adds to the trauma of black women
Yeah.
in
Mbokodo.
different forms of discrimination and oppression, it's the strong part of it. Because there's a research that has been, or a paper that has been written, that even when it comes to justice or dealing with our cases,
Even medicine.
it's like because they are black, they can handle it.
Yes. Yes.
That is what adds to the problem, to the trauma that we go through as black women, because it is said, no, it's fine, we can be lenient to the perpetrator because she can take it. We don't have to deal with this because she can take it, and we need to deal with what does it mean being strong.
The myth of the strong black woman, the myth of the strong woman is killing us, literally.
Killing.
I want to come to our last accomplished speaker for today. Before I open up for questions, I know you've got lots of questions coming in, and I appreciate them. Cheryl Tabane is an award-winning social entrepreneur. She is a social activist. She's a speaker. She's an organizer. She's also currently running the Frida Hartley Women's Shelter in Yeovil.
Yeah.
So we've heard, research has told us that it takes a woman up to 14 attempts to get out of an abusive relationship. We also know that we have the dubious honor of being the rape capital of the world.
Yes.
Our femicide statistics are 5 times higher than the global average.
Crazy.
But every day, you come into contact with women who made the impossible choice, with the women who got out. So I'd like for you to describe your work to us, but more importantly, to describe what is the headspace of the woman who makes the decision to leave and sticks to it. Because we've got many people who are watching, you know, who are in really dire situations. What's the thing that takes a survivor over the edge when he or she decides, I've had enough, I'm done? What does that look like?
First of all, thanks to Vodacom Foundation for giving us this platform to be able to have this conversation, because it's very important. And also congratulations to Masingeta. Hey! Yo, wow, girl, well done. Yeah, Lebo, such a great question. And so what I really wanted to touch base before we even get to that is the face of GBV, because people automatically assume you have to be a certain, person in order for you to have a crime perpetrated to you. I get a lot of questions where people call and ask, so who comes to your shelter? Or when then people come through, they actually get shocked when they see the women that are in there. Like, hey, well, the women are actually intelligent, or they're actually beautiful, or they're actually this. Like, are you sure? Like, it's not like rent a crowd, that type of thing. Because
So
there's a stigma.
disempowered, you must be ugly.
You're supposed to be homeless. You're supposed to look the part. You're supposed to be crying every single day. You're not supposed to have a voice, basically. So just that notion where people automatically assume, Muguti, you have to look a certain way. You can't be intelligent. You can't be this. You can't be that. And therefore, that's why somebody is able to take back your power. But the women that actually come through our shelters are more powerful than the women who are homeless in their own home. So because they are the women who've really packed their bags and are willing to leave a comfortable environment to be in an uncomfortable situation. And that's also another form of oppression, because you find perpetrators that are still comfortable in their own homes. And then you as a victim, you continue to be victimized, because now you moved out of your own personal space to then be at a shelter and be uncomfortable with your children. So you're starting afresh. So you live in Senton, and your kids go to Crawford. And now you are moved from that environment to come and be in Yeovil, and you have to change the school for your kids. You have to literally change your life while the victim continues to be happy in that space and continues to be protected. So those are some of the issues that we're really dealing with, and that society doesn't understand. In a room where a mother has 5 children and the mother has to move, and then the perpetrator has to stay alone. Why is the perpetrator not moved out and placed in a place where he needs to be healed? And why is a woman's life, made uncapped? Exactly, because of one person. So until we change that narrative, we are still far from, ending the scourge of GBV.
But people are always so quick to judge. Well, why didn't she leave? Why didn't she leave the first time he hit her? Why did she stay after so much? Why did she keep quiet?
I love the whys because, I'm just going to give practical examples. You have Uyinani Mkhwejana,
Yes.
the GBV that was inflicted on her.
Hey.
What
waking
question
up
are
and
you
going
going
to the
ask?
post office.
Exactly.
What did
She
she
was
do?
doing an errand.
Yes.
You have Karabo Mokoena, who left her boyfriend, but she was still killed. You have Unonhlanhla Mphahlele, who was also strangled by her husband, even, while planning to leave. So that question really puzzles me. And also when it comes to rape, when women come out there, especially when there's great campaigns coming out, the Me Too or Sue Us or whatever, as soon as a woman speaks out and says, like Rosie says, she was only able to speak about her ordeal 20 years later. And it's the woman that victimized you. My Singita said the same thing. It's the woman that victimized you. Like, how dare you speak about this person now? How dare you come out now when you're emotionally okay? Why didn't you speak about it at that particular time? And it's also worse when the person you're speaking about is now a so-called celebrity or they've made it in life. You want to take that person down. You are jealous. You're an enemy of progress. So we have a lot of women that are double agents of patriarchy as well. That are really killing the movement.
But we also have to acknowledge that a woman can be a double agent of patriarchy, can be violent, but she's also still oppressed by the same patriarchy.
Yeah.
Even that oppressive mentality that she has and that she inflicts on other women is part of her own violent patriarchal conditioning.
Hurt people, hurt others.
This is it.
So they use that because they can't fight their abusers, and sometimes the abusers are within the family. So you don't have the voice in the family. So it's easy for me to attack you. And through me attacking you, I'm making myself feel better. And then you can't see that you're actually just making things worse for yourself. So it's easy to attack other people because you're also dealing with demons that you haven't dealt with yourself. So they are eating you in different ways. So they come through as jealousy. They come through as, you become a double agent of patriarchy. You just become mean. Yeah, exactly. Yes, you begazela. And then you want to blame every single person. Anything that Rosie does, no, it's wrong. She's a bad feminist. Or Masingita, oh no. There are people going to say, oh no, Vodacom chose her because she's disabled. That you're going to get all of that. Instead of just saying, yo, Sisi, well done. You did such a great job. There are people who are so hurt out there and they need to express that through hurting others because they haven't dealt with their own pain. And like Rosie said, you can't, once you go through something, you need to get the right psychosocial help.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you're going to hurt others directly and indirectly.
We all need therapy.
Yeah,
in this
we
country.
all. As a country, we need to sit down. After this, they need to put a screen, SABC One. Let us all.
8 hours a
Let
day.
us all.
Therapy for all of us.
Exactly. Yeah, we're dealing with a lot at the moment.
But you are also dealing with extraordinary women who do the impossible.
Yes.
I mean, we've been told statistically, a survivor of abuse attempts 14 times
before they leave.
before they leave, right? So the woman who makes it to the shelter with her children, with the clothes on her back, who leaves her 3-bedroom house to share a room in the shelter with her kids. Mentally, what headspace is she in? What is it that makes her different to the woman who's on attempt number 1 or even the woman who's on attempt number 12 or 13?
I think also people react differently, even though those are the stats. I always like to use an example of us women going on a diet because we're always on different diets. We choose this, that, herbal this, herbal that. But then there comes a point in your life where you're just like, Yazin, I'm really going to stop eating bread. And you do. And you do, There's just something that just happens at that point. Some people, it happens because maybe you are diabetic or you have like a health issue and you definitely have to stop whatever it is at that point. So it's the same thing with them as well. Something has to strike a chord. There are women who get beaten up so bad and you visit them in hospital and the police are there and they will still go back home to that person. And there are women who literally, you slap them once and they're like, I'm out. And there are women where it's literally just that abuse, that verbal abuse, just that one thing that somebody says in a rough manner and they're like, I can't deal with this. So also our upbringing also plays a huge role. So if you come from an environment where your parents were in that kind of environment and you grow up in that, it's learning. You learn that.
It's conditioning.
You exactly. So you're conditioned to be in that particular position. And as a young woman, I'm growing up, I'm thinking, oh wow, I want a man like my dad. And as a male child in the house, he's thinking, oh, okay, this is how a woman should be loved.
Yeah.
Nami, when I grow up, I want, you hear those men like, hey, when you're not like my mother, I want a woman like my mother, and because he saw his mom being tortured by his father, and the mom never answered. The mom cooked this thing. Daughter, when he arrives at 12 o'clock at night, his pap must be fresh.
Yes, yes.
There's no, your food is in the microwave. In my house, Sildango 7. If you're not there, those food
how.
that's it. We all work. So so those types of issues. Like Rose was talking now, the younger generation now are different. They're growing up in a different society. So for them, if you just say futsek once, that's it.
They're gone.
But for our mothers, I also hear this a lot where I was reading a post on Facebook and this lady's like, how come relationships don't last anymore and marriages like our parents? And I'm like, but our parents were never had a voice. Our mothers never had a voice. Our fathers had children in different area codes, and you just see mhlampe at your dad's funeral, there's 50 other children, and
Who
you
look
accept
like
it.
you.
Exactly. It doesn't even have to be a funeral. It could be going to a spaza shop, and they're like,
Hey.
oh, nangumtanagini, and that's it.
Hey.
So, but time is different. We do have a voice, and we are using that voice. And unfortunately, we're then labeled bad feminist because now we have a voice and we know what we want. So that becomes an issue.
You're loud, you're difficult, you're too
Uyayibona njalo,
much.
ukhuluma kakhulu.
All things being equal, if we lived in a world that had adequate, proper support mechanisms and structures for survivors of violence, what would that look like? What would that world look
So
like?
that world would look like government providing adequate funding first, because our biggest struggle is having those structures, and those structures being able to function properly because there is no money. A lot of shelters are shutting down.
Yes.
And so for me, the sad part is a lot of times, almost every week or second week, there's a movement for something. And we always encourage women to come out and say, speak about your perpetrators, but then when she speaks, she stays with her perpetrator. So kuzoyenzakalani? And then as soon as the perpetrator kicks her out and she calls me and I'm full and power is full and Ikhala Temba is full or Bethany Home is full, what happens to that woman? And people who also like to talk about people's stories. I know you. You told me in confidence this is your situation. It is not my responsibility to then go on Facebook and say you are a hypocrite.
This
Why are you
is so
staying in your
important.
marriage? No.
Yes, this is
No,
this is
you can't
absolutely
do that.
vital.
You can't do
Yes.
that because you are still in that situation and they don't understand the dangers that you're already in. And you are preparing yourself mentally, physically, financially, in all ways for you to be able to step out of that particular situation. Because it's so hard. They say when days are dark, friends are few, but family is worse.
Yeah.
So a lot of
Yes.
women, you get calls from your own sister calling you and saying, hey, Ulebu has been sleeping on my couch and Mina, I don't like to be misplaced, and her kids are making a noise. Can you please accommodate her? So right now, our shelters are full to capacity. We know the numbers. Since the inception of the lockdown, there's been over 100,000 reported cases of GBV.
Whoa.
I get a lot of calls. I get a lot of DMs, women crying, women wanting to move now. Like, send me an Uber. We have to send somebody an Uber, right now, because this is the time where they could literally leave at this particular point. But where do we take them? Because we don't have adequate funding. Our spaces are limited. So until government takes this as serious as banning alcohol and cigarettes, maybe we will get somewhere.
Tata Cheryl, yes. Daki, I want to come to you. We've spoken about the change in tone this Women's Month, that there seems to be a fed-upness that is coming from South African women that is creating a shift in the public space. As a corporate, what responsibility does Vodacom Foundation have to ensuring that these kinds of conversations expand, and also to helping to assist in creating the kind of support mechanisms that Cheryl was referring to for survivors?
Yes, firstly, I need to emphasize that Vodacom is not an island.
Sure.
We are part of society with challenges. We exist in a patriarchal society, and patriarchy spills into the work environment. That is one thing that we have to remind ourselves on a daily basis. We exist in a society which is highly racially polarized, and therefore we cannot close our eyes and pretend as if these things are not happening. So we have a lot of programs that we run as the company and also as the Vodacom Foundation, especially on gender empowerment. So this program that we are running with you now, it falls under the Vodacom Foundation, under gender empowerment. So under gender empowerment, we have a partnership with the Department of Social Development. We entered into this partnership in 2014 to assist government with the fight against gender-based violence. And we established together a gender-based violence command center, which is in Pretoria. The command center is run by trained social workers. They receive calls and they provide counseling on the spot, and they refer the callers, depending on the severity of the case, either to the police service or to the community-based social workers or to the shelters, as we have just heard. But what we bring as a technology company in this relationship with government is technology. So the command center has got integrated technology. It's got voice calls, it's got USSD, it's got Skype, and it's got SMS, and it also has geolocation. Now, the power of technology in how we use the information, because now during the lockdown, we have actually started leveraging this integrated technology in order to draw statistics. Because you hear statistics, being thrown left, right, and center about what is happening in the country. And what we did was to get the dashboard to understand exactly what is happening. Now, the command center does not only receive gender-based violence related calls. They receive general calls about all sorts of troubles that South Africans are going through. But through the technology, we are able to isolate gender-based violence-related calls. And we are able to tell you where the calls are coming from, the concentration of the calls per geographical location. And this then helps government to mobilize resources in the form of the criminal justice system and the social workers so that they focus in those areas. Now, what is going to shock all of you? Last year, the command center received about 87,000 general calls, and 1,800 of those were GBV related. Between January this year and now, the command center has already received over 100,000 calls, general calls, and over 3,000 of those are GBV related. It is really, really scary. The technology actually also tells us about the level of gender-based violence, according to the different levels of the lockdown. So we are able to see that during the lockdown, the highest number of calls was coming from Gauteng, followed by the Western Cape, and followed by KZN. The Northern Cape has got the lowest number of cases. But we are also able to see that during level 5, the number of calls were actually lower, but they were domestic violence related. As soon as the president opened the streets in level 3, the numbers started skyrocketing.
Oh, wow.
And as soon as government unbanned alcohol, the numbers started skyrocketing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am not a sociologist, but you don't have to be a genius to see the connection between the two.
Sure.
So it is really, really scary. So this is what we do in partnership with government. And then we also have a response program where we assist the victims of gender-based violence that are in the shelters. Because the majority of the victims of gender-based violence, especially the ones that end up in the shelters, are those that come from a lower socioeconomic background, who are highly dependent on the abuser. And therefore, they cannot break away, from that cycle of violence. And what we do using technology, we provide ICT training, to empower them, because an empowered woman becomes an independent woman.
Yeah.
And for our employees, with Vodafone, we ran a survey to understand the relationship between domestic violence and workplace performance. women responded within the workplace. And then that gave birth to a domestic violence policy for our employees, which complements our sexual harassment policy. And this policy has got a 10 days leave, full 10 days paid leave, that if you are a victim of domestic violence and you work for Vodacom, we give you that, and it is also linked to our total wellness center.
That's amazing.
So these are some of the things that we are doing. Yes.
Fantastic. We have just gone 3 minutes past 11. I can't believe we've been speaking for an hour. It feels like the time has just flown by. So, unfortunately,
But Lebu,
yes,
Lebu, I know I cannot wait until the end because I may forget. You might have seen I disappeared. I disappeared for a few minutes because the CEO, the group CEO, remember, I am VSA CEO.
Yes.
The group CEO, Shamil, called me. So I decided, Shamil, you are a man. We are having a conversation about what women
are
are going
talking.
through.
Yeah.
Why are you calling me? Women are talking. Leave me alone. And I could see he's prodding. So I decided, okay, fine. Let me take this call. Maybe he wants me to announce that we have appointed Raisibe, a phenomenal black woman chartered accountant, as the Vodacom group CFO. No, that is not what he wanted me to announce,
Well done.
because that is already
Raisibe.
announced. Jamil is actually calling me to say, Taki, I am watching. I would want us to set up a GBV fund. Put 5 million rand in that fund.
Yes.
Wow.
If you don't have the
well
money, I
done.
will give it to you.
Fabulous.
Oh, wow.
Fabulous.
Wow.
Yes.
Wonderful news.
Yeah.
Thank you
Very
so
good.
much.
We are within.
We are with it. We are with it. We are with it. We need a brainstorming session after
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, as you
Yeah.
were saying, with the app that you already have, women can call in using multiple platforms. I mean, we need a kind of networked response to gender-based
Yeah.
violence, and
Yeah.
technology has a
Yeah.
huge role to play
Of
in that.
course.
So I'm happy to see Vodacom leading the way in that
Yeah.
regard. Tata,
Amazing.
well done.
Amazing.
Well done.
Amazing.
So, hey, I can't believe that this hour has flown by. Thank you so much for tuning in. My
Yeah.
last question
Yeah.
to each panelist in closing. If we lived in a country that enabled women, that truly enabled women to be able to survive this violence, what would have to change? What would an equitable, just, safe society for women look like? What are some of the changes that you would like to see?
Two things.
Yes.
The attitude of women
Yeah.
towards women issues that will have to change, because that on its own, it's oppression.
Yes.
And unless it took women 64 years ago to decide that we cannot play by their rules.
Yes.
The thing is, we're still playing by their rules.
Yeah.
You cannot beat someone in a game where they created the rules. And you want to play with their own rules.
Yeah.
People usually say to me, Masingite, you are a non-conformist. I said, I'm not a non-conformist. How do I conform to something that was not designed to
By
fit
you.
me?
Yes.
Not by me, and even
For
to fit
you.
me. It was actually designed to destroy me. And
Exactly.
somehow you expect me to
To just
conform
play. Yeah.
to
Yebo.
that. I can't. I've got to alter it. And when you alter something, something has to break.
Thank you, girl.
Something
Yes.
has to be ripped.
Yes.
And it's going to take us understanding that the rules, if we need to have, I don't believe in rules. I've never
They're meant
played
to be
by
broken.
the rules. I break them. I think it's all the time. Because I realize that unless
Limited.
I I alter something, it would stay like that and it won't fit me.
It takes a lot of strength to deal with the resistance that comes with breaking a space.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's the thing. That's how it is labeled. I always say you cannot shatter the glass ceiling and not expect cuts and bruises. So you go into it knowing that there will be cuts and bruises. So what you have to think is, how do I protect myself from cuts and bruises? Because if I want to break the glass ceiling, clearly, Rosie knows, when we climb Kili, we know it's cold up there. So we know we get the right gear so that we are able to climb, but we are not affected.
And you
by the
train.
cold. We train.
And you don't go alone.
We don't go alone.
Yeah.
So you cannot climb Mount Kili and you just wake up and say, I'm going to climb Mount Kili. You will die.
Yeah.
You will die.
Yes.
It is, I didn't create a principle. It's a principle of life.
Exactly.
Thank you.
So true.
Thank you.
Rosie?
Just on that, I think it's more of the mental, because I mean, Kili, my first climb up Kili, I didn't get up because mentally I wasn't ready. Second time I went up because I had a destination. And so going into your question is that we need that collectiveness, but we also need to get into it into a mental state and actually put on our boots. If we need to put on the gloves to not pick up those glasses, and if it does cut us, it's okay. We've got a Band-Aid there, but we still not going to stop us. But also what also really needs to change is our police system and our judicial system.
Yes.
It's special because, and I was speaking to somebody behind who was saying, the policies that are in place are great on paper.
Hey, the South African story.
But the South African police and even citizens on the ground, many know what the different loopholes are in that judicial system. So you can say, well, they followed protocol, but however, it was broken by this, and this, and this. And so that also just needs to be, and it's not even just cutting, it's smashing. We need to get, what are those things that you come in and just like, you know what I mean? It's
Rainbow.
Finish it.
Fearlessly. Cheryl?
Also, I just want to say thanks to Taki, because Vodacom is also one of the organizations that supports our organization.
Beautiful work.
And only because we believe in empowering women to become better through skills development. And they have come through and partnered with us since last year to empower women through those skills and donating laptops. So I really appreciate the Vodacom Foundation. And I shall take the notification for that 5 million. My phone is on me. But I think we also need to get to a place where we have a government that understands and respects and also does not employ perpetrators.
Amen.
Until we get it up there, angithi hierarchy. So until it starts right up there, it's going to crumble downstairs. So until we get a government that understands that we need to set an example as a people governing people, then it's going to be much more easier for us. But if that is not right up there, then sizohlulega, going downstairs, sizohlulega. So until we get to that point where our government or our cupcake can say, "Hi, bo, wena duduzi, wena's banbani." You can't be here. You can't be here. It's a misrepresentation. You can't come and stand to us and say, "I declare GBV as a national state crisis," and yet everyone that's around you is a perpetrator. So it really defeats the whole purpose. So we really need them to really come to the party and make an example and start there, because then how do they then come to us and then start making other laws or rules that we need to play about, and yet their house is dirty. They need to clean house.
And this is where the loud, difficult, bad feminists
Come
online
from.
and in the media, this is where your role is very important, because you are the ones who are actively outing these
Yes,
abusers and
yes,
holding these men
yes,
accountable.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
ways that we haven't seen before.
Exactly.
Which is
exactly.
exciting. Now I'm happy. Taki, closing comments from you, please.
Oh, women, ladies, you have really raised us today. I am really, besides myself, I wish this could go on for another 3 hours. You are right.
Me
We need to have a half day. Lekgotla. And we need to bring more women, and we must bring government, to
Yes,
this
yes, hold them
conversation, because,
accountable.
we cannot fight gender-based violence successfully without partnerships. We need everyone to come on board, civil society, big business, and everyone, because gender-based violence affects everyone, and each one of us bring our own area of strength. Government is the policy maker. They must make sure that those policies are properly enforced. Civil society always has their eye on the ground, and they do not only hold government accountable, they also hold us as big business to be accountable, because ours should not just be to make profits. Ours should be to make profits whilst at the same time we are doing good. But to close, let me go back to how we found Masingita. I watched Masingita in an hour interview. I was with my daughter. I did not know her. She was the bomb. I immediately Googled her on the spot, and I just fell in love with her. Then, about a few months later, in September, I remember vividly, I was working from home that day, and the Deputy Minister of Communications, Honorable Pinky, called me. And when ministers call,
You
we
answer.
run. Fortunately, their offices are close to my house. So I said, Minister, just give me an hour, I'll be there soon. When I walked into the Deputy Minister's office, there was this familiar face behind the desk. I looked at her and I was like, I saw you on TV. Are you Masingita? I could remember the name. She was a little bit shy because I was all over the show. I asked for a photograph. And I sent the photograph immediately to my daughter. And I said, guess who I am with? I am with Masingita. What the deputy minister actually wanted was just a partnership for a conference to celebrate women. I said to the deputy minister, the conference can wait. Let me tell you about my story of Masingita. And I explained what I saw on TV that day. And I said, I can do more. I would want Masingita to be the Vodacom Foundation ambassador. I called Angela, who has organized this show today. And I said, Angela, do you know Masingita? And she said, no, I don't know her. I said, she is Masingita Masungu. Please Google her immediately. Once you have read about her, you will agree with what I am saying. She Googled her and she said, okay, Taki, I understand. When I went back to the office the following day, I said, we are signing her up. Please make sure that we run all the checks with our compliance, because we need to get her. And the rest is history. Masingita, thank you.
Love it.
Well
we love
done,
to see
girl.
it. We love to see it.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the end. Wow.
Great job,
Thank you so
Lebo.
much to
Great
this
job. Yeah.
esteemed, powerful, intelligent, capable, accomplished panel. Thank you to all of you who have been watching via Facebook. Thank you for your comments. I see you've shared how excited you are, how much more we need conversations like this. I also see you applauding the GBV fund. Thank you very much. I want to close speaking about an issue that has come up a lot in this conversation, which is competition between women, right? So we know that patriarchy serves men. It is
Yeah.
designed to serve men. We also know that patriarchy oppresses men, which is a conversation we don't have enough. Patriarchy teaches men, boys don't cry, suppress your emotions.
Yeah.
It teaches men all sorts of warped ideas about power, about sex. We must talk about that. But we also know that patriarchy teaches women to compete with each other.
Yes.
And what
Yes.
we're seeing is a rise in solidarity amongst women, which is a direct challenge to that conditioning that we are each other's competition. Solidarity means that I don't have to like you, I don't have to know you, I don't have to agree with the way that you live your life or even the way that you think. To acknowledge the fact that by virtue of you being a woman in this society, you are on the receiving end of systemic violence. And when I see that systemic violence being meted out against you, it's my responsibility to believe first and foremost that it is happening and then to act. That is what solidarity looks like.
Yeah.
We can undo this conditioning. Conditioning is it's teaching, you know? If you can be taught something, you can
unlearn.
also clean the slate and teach yourself something else. It's hard work, it's not easy, but we're doing it. It's possible. And you sitting at home, sitting on your phone, sitting in your office, you are also doing it. By watching and participating and engaging in this conversation, you are also actively showing your solidarity and challenging gender-based violence in the society and in the world. So we appreciate you. Please continue to share this conversation. We'll keep the link up on the Facebook page. Make sure that people watch it even long after it's over. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to all of you,
Thank
Daki,
you.
Masingita, Rosie, Cheryl, Angela, for putting this together. This is Brenda. Thank you so much. Vodacom Foundation. We're signing out from Voter World. Happy Women's Month.
Happy
Go well. God
Women's
bless.
Month.
My message is for men. And my message to men is that you need to be the change that you want to see. You need to think about what your behavior implies, what your behavior approves of, and you need to take a stand. Because the people that are being abused cannot take a stand. If they could, they would. It's up to us to make the change and to be the light.